What up, everybody? We're back with another show. It's your man Chase, coming to you from my studio in LA, as always. And today we have a very special guest, a proper oil painter. He works really large and he's a really deep thinker. His name is Stefan Kleinschuster. Great guy, great mind, and great artist. Let's take a listen. And without further ado, here's Stefan.
Yeah,
Welcome,
right.
Stefan.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Man, I'm so happy you're here.
Cheers. Well, again, it's an honor to be here. First time in the studio for me. You guys are going to have to come down and check out this studio, man. It's like you never saw color being placed like this anywhere else in the world. I swear to God.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, dude.
Fantastic. Yeah, we just got caught up again at your showing recently. And yeah, I was just like, wow, this work is spectacular, you know. Because I'd never seen it in person. You know, we hung out a bunch of times.
Seems
before.
that's the mutual experience right now.
Yeah.
We're seeing each other's stuff in person.
I mean, just because the thing about obviously the medium is not something I'm so familiar with. You know, oil.
Huh.
And of course, the respect is immediate because it's such a notoriously difficult medium to work with.
Sure.
But what I love is that the brushstrokes themselves become like an energetic living.
Like
body,
like an element.
like an element to it.
Yeah, almost shaped life of themselves, so to speak.
Yeah, there's a stream of energy, and then this luminescence, and again, like the size you're working, I think it's just. I mean, everything is being served, and all the senses are like, wow,
man.
it's such an impact.
Dude. I really appreciate that. And coming from you, again, Chase attended, and I was hoping to have these discussions actually the day before. I was hoping, because I knew I was going to run into a bunch of Hollywood people there because it was through a production company that we did it. But I knew that the people that we were going to have discussions with weren't exactly the people who are going to be aesthetically minded, even though they are in the movies and in theory they deal with stuff that are of the senses. Which is why I was hoping Chase showed up, because then I knew we were going to have a conversation that was going to be worth something.
Yeah.
And of course he did, and of course it was, and it definitely made the night. So
Thanks,
it always
man.
gets into the topic of
your work made the night. Trust
well,
me. And by the way, so for people that are listening, this was a showing at a beautiful property in the hills,
like Park Hill or something. To
like
talk
the estate
about
had a name,
space.
I think even.
Yeah, it was Katy Perry's old joint when she was dating Russell Brand.
Yeah.
She did yoga in the courtyard, but not a whole hell of a lot else in the house, I think, actually.
Well, if she was dating Russell Brand, I have an idea or two what else went on in the house.
Oh God, he has probably a couple of wild moments. Maybe some cops at the gate a couple times.
So that was a beautiful setting because the traditional gallery route is always a good one, an interesting one. But I think now, when you're smart, there's other venues to show at.
Sure.
And to show in a setting that's kind of deserving of the work, or vice versa.
I like that. Yeah.
I think it's a visualization component that can be very powerful.
Yeah,
because now you see it in this beautiful, I don't know, what is a $5 million home or more, and then these beautiful masterpieces hanging beautifully lit.
Yeah,
I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, I think it is. It might be, and I don't know. It's kind of like, because artists had always taken it. It's moved always from the desperation of getting into a gallery or dealing with a gallery system, because that's a patented system.
Right.
And I think that as it moves out of the more, orchestrated, patented system, then it went to the streets, right?
Right.
Right. And this is where most of the people who are the potent movers and shakers today, such as yourself, actually would learn, is sort of take it to the streets. Then it can return to the institution. But in this case, and I think the nicest part is it's neither the institution nor the streets, but it's kind of like the domicile, like the living space, right?
Yeah.
And so in that way, it might be another iteration as it goes around the cycle of it.
I love it. You walked in, it was beautiful. There was catering, drinks, good crowd, beautiful setting through the garden. Then there was a guest house, then the main house. And I think it's a great way to go. And there was a charity involved as well, I think.
Yeah.
Right? So then you're pulling together all these different worlds, and a lot of people don't get to go to galleries, especially some of these types, because they're so busy.
They do not.
So it's a nice little shortcut in order to get this crowd in front of some of the work.
Sure.
Right.
And as a form, I think that like we talked about aesthetics before we opened this up. We talked about aesthetics, and I don't think people understand that it also means that which is eaten, that which is drank, that which is consumed visually, that which is discussed. That is the energy in the room. That is the setting of the room. That's the content around things. That's the production of the entire thing. It has to do with the framing, because that's what a gallery is.
Right.
It's a framing device so that the context is set for a new kind of interpretation of the painting as it comes in. Well, a domicile is a place where these things are enjoyed. But if you couple it with all kinds of things like great food, I mean, specifically great food, because at galleries, I mean, I sat at those, those fucking gallery shows for, I would go all the time. And I know that they're cheap. It's always begrudgingly given out and always like in little. And I'm always like, you don't do it that way.
Minimum expense because obviously it comes out of their pocket.
Yeah, dude. So, I'm just like lay it out, make it really comfortable and happy for people to be in. Make sure they're super well fed and they got tons of food.
Right.
And there's lots of good people. You don't invite elements there that will challenge it or ruin the system.
Right.
And so you're curating a lot more than just the art that's there.
Yeah.
And if you're aware of that, then you just naturally do it. But systemically, it's an interesting move. And I saw it because there was just, there was a need for it to have just mere events. Right. And I was like, we might as well just show art here too.
Right.
I mean, dude, it becomes the focus of discussion anyway.
Right.
Or at least something to which the discussion can be deferred.
Right.
But anyway, that's what I think. I mean, these dudes, like I said, come down to the studio because these dudes need to be in that setting for sure. These paintings, dude.
Yeah.
100%.
Thank you for that, because I'm not very well versed in the arts per se. I just know I create, but I couldn't.
That's
tell
funny,
you.
by the way. The listeners out there, he's only half true about that one.
I mean, I know people in my peers, and the people that I came up with, and who I've been on the lookout for, or friends.
Yeah.
Just on that side, and every once in a while. There's space on my little hard drive for more.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so
he's being very demure, folks. He's a hell of a lot smarter than I. He's a kind guy.
But
humble guy.
What I like about that is taking things into your own hands. And then I met a guy. I did a gig for this attorney a long time ago, and his name is Neil Rothstein. And I guess he was a lead prosecuting attorney versus Enron.
Oh, shit.
And I did some graphic stuff for him, like way long time ago. And he said, Chase, never forget charities and foundations. In a town like this in LA, he said charities and foundations.
Yeah.
Because there's no conflict of who can sit on the board,
Yeah.
There's no conflict of interest in as far as like some sort of commercial...
Sure.
Opposition, and people can be friends there, and all of a sudden if you start working with them, and specifically you're supporting a cause, people will come out, and people love to spend. And what a lot of people maybe don't know is that you buy a piece there, parts of the proceeds and goes to help that charity,
for sure.
So if you're buying as let's say as a corporate asset or as a personal piece of in the collection, it's actually it's kind of like a swap meet.
It is absolutely
for people that want to
concept, swap meet.
I mean, higher concept, of course, swap meet. But there's savings there,
sure, and
everyone involved is happy. And it's I don't know about other cities in the world, but in LA, as you know, one of the primary sources for fundraising for a lot of charities and foundations is through the arts.
Absolutely.
Right? It's interesting.
And it's funny how they would use that too in a certain way. I mean, as the hub, for the whole exchange. Yeah. Which is very smart on their part.
Very
because,
smart,
dude, I mean, what else are you going to do? Again, aesthetics rules. The experience rules. It just so happens that along those lines, friends are made.
Right.
But that's why aesthetics, we talk about art. And, I could go on for a considerable amount of time about the importance of it. Which I'm assuming we'll get into a bit, but it literally is the wings on which all of these things fly.
Right.
And to not admit that is, I mean, I understand that there's a little bit of a corporate line out there that would take the power away from the hand that made it.
Right.
But ultimately and a charity is to which the hand is deferring.
Right.
Also says, I'm gracious to be working with you, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But the realization that it's aesthetically run is kind of an important for the artists out there, for all of you who are, painting and spray painting and, screen printing and, raising hell in the streets. I mean, it's run on that. So that's not to be forgotten.
I was doing some thinking, and, we have the Medici family, as a historic sort of patron of the arts, and then the church. I mean, let's talk about.
Oh, dude.
I mean, without the church, some of the greatest works would have never been made.
Right?
They would have never existed, and that's bananas. But
Yeah.
now those, of course, the Medicis are no longer. I mean, we're talking 500 years ago. The church, we all know what's happening.
Yeah. Right.
And so in my own mind, and I've never shied away from working in commercial settings. Either to help brands with marketing or assets or this or that, or a live painting here or an office thing there. And so the more I think about it, I think they have a responsibility to commission work. And to become corporations, I think, should become, rather than just using an artist for, let's say, a campaign or an office wall or whatever. I think
I see.
they and back to corporate assets, right? It's an addition to. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know for a fact that you're on the right path. In fact, just a couple of days ago, I don't know if you're just channeling what I had thought or what was sort of in the general wavelength, but so. The problem with specific patronage is we all know that there are specific conditions and specific tastes that run with it. And that can sometimes run, those of you who've had commissions or dealt with people who have really specific tastes, that if you have something that can be reworked in terms of a form, if there aren't, if there are ideas that were pre-discussed that couldn't be carried out, and or the idea changed, and or the artist had a new idea, the patron can always walk in and say, well, I asked for a purple one. Why did you give me an orange one?
Right.
And the discussion is, well, I felt that way. It needed to be that color because that's what I felt about us.
Right.
But that usually gets in when you're dealing with the Medicis with just few voices. Then the money comes with a different kind of string attached to it. When you get corporate money, there's an interesting thing. What happens is almost like a collective, like Steinbeck could call it, like a phalanx moving. It's the whole of the sum of the movement is greater than the parts,
right?
In a certain way. So the movement can be almost more anonymously handed across instead of with all these strings attached. Because if it's corporate, it's sort of impersonal, right?
There's no one captain that is.
That's
commanded.
exactly right.
Exactly, yeah.
Comes with the board, and then all you need, in a certain sense, is the best case scenario to be suggested and or come across, and the board might suggest, why don't you just run with it, and he could just have his thing. And since they all have so many different voices, nobody really could stand up aesthetically to something that really fits the bill in those instances.
Right.
So it's actually, I think, a healthier move now, even though a year ago you couldn't possibly convince me that corporate money was the place to go. And all of a sudden I'm like, damn, that's the only place to go.
It's kind of like
it's the only place to go.
Private collectors, I mean, they're all being wooed left and right.
Absolutely.
And so with all these corporations, I mean, and there's how many are there? I mean, it's in the tens of thousands.
Yeah.
And let's say even the top 200-300, their available budget. It's just monstrous. It's just immense. It would take care of an entire generation of artists.
Absolutely.
Right? And to build these collections,
Absolutely.
Look at what Paul Marciano did from Guess. Right?
Oh, sure.
He turned his thing now into a museum.
Smart.
It's the collection, but it's technically a museum.
Yeah, smart.
Right? And so...
Absolutely. And that builds in value.
And it
builds in value in a way that's really interesting. I love the compounded names and the compounded voices.
Right.
Because you get a corporation, which has its own name and its own brand. Then you get the voice of the artist. You get the voice to which the painting could be made and for which it's made. All those voices get empowered and or increase in value as the exchange has been made and gathered.
Right.
And then the provenance is created around the piece. It sells to the right spot, or it keeps changing hands within the districts of personalities.
Right.
It really just benefits everybody, especially it benefits visions.
Yeah.
Because when you have money that seems to be endless, you get endless supplies of creativity out of that.
You bring up an interesting thing. I think a few years ago there was some talk about adjusting the law where, let's say, a Basquiat, just to give a little example, was sold back in the day, on Broome Street, on the street for, hey, just give me
Shit.
$500, man. Right? And now it's worth 60 million.
Yeah.
Should, then thinking, future, should the estate, I guess the notion is that every time the work of art changes hand and a profit gets made, a percentage of that deal should go back to the original author
Could
or
it's interesting.
Artist in
It's an
question.
interesting idea.
Interesting notion.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, because first of all, it's a unique object,
Right.
and as such, is a point of origin. That's where you get into art in the age of mechanical reproduction.
Right.
And so when you run across the original from which the thing is coming, all these images are coming.
The source. Yeah.
It does have like a little bit of it's basically like a publishing company for music.
Right.
Every time you use that jingle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's got to pay back.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm in favor of it just because it seems the most natural.
Yeah.
Also, what I've seen is that if artists are taken care of, we all know that the struggling artist is kind of the maxim of the norm of the statement. But if they're supported, I even go back to Bach and all those artists who, between the composers who didn't have any money and between Bach who had enough support, or at least that was happily supported, they produce unbelievable amounts of shit and gorgeous stuff.
Right.
You don't need to suffer in order to do it. It might force you to toe the line as to the choices that you're making.
Because if anything, life in and of itself is enough, provides enough suffering. Right?
Yeah, dude. Jesus.
Having lack of monetary gains or position or whatever.
Sure.
That's not necessary.
It is not
in order
necessary.
to make work.
It is not. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's
and here we are. But I'm sure that that with this more generous wedding, which also comes down to we mentioned some of the artists of the past. One of which is like a Rubens. Which I don't know if you're listeners
from my
at home.
hometown, Antwerp,
right? Exactly. Here we come back around, but he was like so much more of than just a mere artist who happened to be very talented. Right. He was also like incredibly diplomatic, knew all the languages of all the courts, in all of Europe, and basically was at home in all of them.
Right.
And so the way in which his diplomacy sung the praises of his patrons was part of the artistic exchange.
Right.
And the desired aesthetic sort of changed with his desires as well. And, that's when, art and the environment into which it's going really becomes copacetic and strong.
Yeah.
And when everybody, I know also a lot of art has been used for rebellion, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Still, it can go into a rebellious environment. It's still really earthy and wonderful, but there's nothing better than an exchange that makes everybody feel great.
Oh, yeah.
There's just nothing better.
One thing I like about, because Peter Paul Rubens, for the people that didn't hear Stefan mention it, the full name, Antwerp painter, and painted in the style of Baroque.
Yeah, 1700s.
Yeah, 1700s. But the furniture makers of that era, right? Because Baroque is plump, it's lush.
Yeah, it is. Isn't that funny?
You think the standard today of a beautiful woman is what it always has been? No, go look at some Baroque paintings. And so the furniture makers, right? They would put these bulging, thick legs on tables, and it was their way.
Moving down to these nice thin ankles, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It was the porno of the day.
It was absolutely.
Because if you put that on if you put certain those table legs didn't exist before.
Yeah.
Right. So they were like sneakily, subversively putting these sexy table legs. It's just out of wood.
But that's when you get hour-long conversations about a chair. That's when that happens. Between guys in salons. It's like, damn, you should have seen this chair, baby.
Yeah. But imagine that era. Of course, with the reign of the church.
Oh my God.
At peak even.
Oh yeah.
Bananas, and still, artists always find a way to communicate a message.
Well, it's funny. Even the corporate and the church. It's interesting because now the corporate is closer to the church,
right?
Because anybody who is a la like Pope Sixtus with the Sistine ceiling of Michelangelo's, they're kind of just stewards of that large fortune. They don't really have an interest in it. So they know the legacy. Right. They know that what they're commissioning is important.
Right.
But they could really give a shit.
It was marketing of the messages.
Yeah, you
right?
bet.
Of the principles of what they were selling.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a depiction of a white Jesus until Michelangelo painted him in 1516 or something.
Yeah.
Right? It was the first time there was like a white Jesus, because the Bible says
think about it.
Dark skin and bushy hair.
Yeah.
He was kind of like an Egyptian type.
Yeah. All the Byzantine stuff, all the way up into Constantinople, was all, you wouldn't even really know. I mean, it seems very, 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 Arabic or Semitic.
Yeah, of course.
Very,
Yeah.
very much so. I mean, clearly, because he was. So
then art as a marketing tool. Because if you still go to those churches, the architecture alone is just, you're just in awe. Like, wow,
you're
God,
sold.
this is God's house.
Yeah, you're sold.
Yeah. And then the paintings, like, wow.
Yeah, you're sold on God right off the bat.
These huge triptychs and like all this crazy giant work is to sell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's to sell us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it works.
It works, man.
It fucking works.
Well, there was back in the day, I know there was a story that was kind of interesting. It was a very fervent priest had gotten one of his own lectures under his skin, and he had gone and taken like a hammer and he had broken apart a lot of the sculptures in the church. And he wrote a letter, saying he was doing this because he was functionally an iconoclast, and he was, that if you worship this, it was a form of idolatry. He believed that you weren't you're worshiping the object and not the God beyond.
In the Hebrew tradition of, do not make an image of God, do not name God, because then you create distance between you and God.
That's right. And I remember reading the letter back from the bishop, and he might have even received a personal visit from these dudes, but the bishop probably showed up with, a couple of bigger bishops, a cardinal with a couple bishops on his shoulder, a couple of thugs, and basically said, dude, this is the language of the masses. The language of the masses is visual. And this is the reason why we have these things. So if you want to get, you don't want to get into ideologies, you're going to find a problem, because we're just trying to communicate the most amount of information with the least amount of invasion. Because people can fight stuff that's based in truth, but they can't fight stuff based in art. If you say this is true, somebody's going to say, no, it isn't. But if you say this is art, they say, well, yeah, it is. So
it can't be denied.
It cannot be denied. So he knew, and he got yelled at. And it was. I think he was allowed to keep his job at that point, but just barely.
Whoopsies.
And his legs probably.
Oh yeah,
Remember that time.
and his thumbs. The torture. When I was living in Prague for a while, I looked. There's this museum of torture there.
Jesus,
man.
Speaking of,
we're talking about this era. Forget it. Like. Unbelievable, like dildo-esque sticks with like cacti pins on it, all sorts of ways to have you realize that you have sinned, you're now a heathen, and if you don't survive this, then we were right. It's like what? Funny? It's a Kafkaesque situation. You can't get out of it.
And they had the Real Housewives of New Jersey or something running constantly on a screen that you had to sit in front of. Right above that machine, you get to watch that.
Unbelievable, crazy. Look, but, I didn't know a few things. I was looking around, and you almost didn't become a painter.
Oh yeah. Well, I've.
We're talking now way back when.
Me
to your university or college days, right?
Well, yeah. I think that
you almost didn't become a painter.
Yeah. I almost didn't become a lot of things. Well, and I think one of them is definitely a painter that way. It was actually probably I visited this woman's house. I had gone through a little bit of the art deal because it was literally the only thing I could do.
This is in Colorado.
And I had been lured by a lot of different things, and one of them was even like geology and shit like that. I did so well in a geology course that I was being wooed by the upper management of the school to join the geology department. It seemed to me very obvious but what I didn't realize is I was applying all of my artistic understanding to geology. So, you know how you go through life and you may just try on a bunch of hats, and all of a sudden you realize there's a common theme, is that all the hats were purple, that you tried on. They might have been different shapes, but they're all purple. So you find the purple and then you go for the purple. So that's the reason why I sort of ended up in it. And plus, when you can draw and it seems to be easy to do that, or when you seem aesthetically minded, there's just natural gravitation towards those ends. So I ended up being there. But it wasn't without, some choices, that were like, it's the only thing I can do functionally.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I read that because you were your degree was in printmaking, and then you took a course and got into ceramics and sculpting. Right?
Oh yeah. Well, my
so I think that's always interesting when you totally go one way, which a lot of kids do. You
Yeah.
know? And then all of a sudden, like you said, purple habit. But there's something.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you got it. I wrote it down here, where you took a painting class 3 years after you got your degree.
It was well. I
Because the degree is already one huge accomplishment.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
normally, one would go down that path
Sure.
because everything's like sort of rearranging itself towards that
Yeah,
direction.
absolutely.
And then just probably on a whim or something, or because of this woman, maybe.
Well, I don't know where it said that I took a class. I don't want to say that you're incorrect in that. I might have come across somebody who was influential as a painter, but printmaking was like a primary thing for me for a long time, and that was just because of the instructors.
Right.
It wasn't even necessarily because of the medium. It's kind of like it's somebody said that printmaking is a good way to screw up a great drawing.
Yeah.
and because it's such a technical pain in the ass
Yeah.
that I think that I was a halfway decent cook. But I really wasn't ready to deal any. I was so immature as an artist that I really was just stabbing at halfway decent copacetic environments to hang out with printmaker. The instructors were just really cool.
Yeah.
And it was an heir to this Lazansky fortune, which were I forget what his monastic lineage is, but Lazansky and then a bunch of these teachers at Colorado State University. But the real mover in Colorado State University, and he's gone now, so I can't like shout out to him or anything, but named Richard DeVore, and he was a ceramicist. And he was the one who introduced that the language, the visual language, is an actual language that communicates behavior.
Right.
So it's not so much, colors creating, because there are interpretive qualities in color where you can't say blue means this or red means that. But
I guess technically you could.
You could, but it would be scientifically trying to find a common thread.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And for different cultures, different colors mean different things.
Right.
I mean, it is true that red and orange induce digestion, and blue doesn't.
Right.
And in fact, one of the discussions that this Richard DeVore, who is one of the more famous ceramicists in the world at that point, who just stuffed himself away into Colorado State University because of a free kiln and free glaze and as much clay as he could get his hands on, and they paid him a ton, and he had to pay, do a couple sections. But he was an Ann Arbor guy, and he was in the Smithsonian and the Met and all kinds of stuff. I mean, he was heavily collected, like with Peter Volkos and Betty Woodman, like the big, he's one of the big dudes. But anyway, introduced the visual language, and that was like the behavior. How is the painting or the artwork behaving? Was it buoyant? Was it falling? Was it wrenching out of itself? Was it twisting? Did it resist itself? Were there textural distinctions that made it so that it was arguing within itself? All kinds of stuff which were definitely declarative towards the nature of the form. And then as soon as he introduced that stuff, then my eyes were opened as to the behavior of art objects as an extension of ourselves.
Right. And that's one of the things when I came to your showing, what we spoke about, was that to me, your paintings, they're a moment in time on a timeline, and I kept wondering,
you said,
okay, this is a position, but it's not sort of like a still life with a basket of fruit and that's what it is.
Yeah.
No, but I sensed that something had gone on before and something was continuing to go on into the future, and you just snapped that still frame out of a sequence. And I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that you mentioned that. I'm not so surprised that you mentioned that. In fact, it was probably pretty on the level of expected that you were to come to those conclusions. But it's not so much that you said it; it was my taking of it, because I'd never addressed narrative in my stuff at all. In fact, I didn't want to. Right. I didn't want to address any kind of narrative because it talks about story, and story is lame when it comes to paintings. Because well, no, but I thought it was. You know what I mean? Okay, so I just in my presumption of things, it was like an expected ingredient, maybe. Yeah, stories from movies. Stories are for movies. And they're for short stories and they're for books. They're not for paintings. Painting is a permanent object of contemplation that is in front of you, that says everything it's ever going to say visually for you, and then expands outwards in terms of interpretation and the discovery of things that are going on. But the actual narrative of the subjective players within it is something I always thought was something to avoid. But when you mentioned that, I was like, shit, no wonder I'm getting into movies and stuff. Because, this is because narrative is, I guess, just part of the way I work.
Yeah, and it's a good segue. You've been writing screenplays.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Oh, yeah. I can't
when
even
did you
help
start?
it.
Because I think literature is like a big influence in your life.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
I
and,
used
and
to.
that's heard immediately after one conversation. I knew that.
Yeah,
Right.
I got in there.
Your word selection, the way you phrase things and everything. It's just
Thanks.
imparted.
Thanks.
So when did that become? Like when did you say like, you know what, I have shit to say. Let me write some stuff down. Let me attempt
it took a very, I wouldn't say a long time, because I'm a little bit of a late bloomer, which for all those late bloomers out there, don't worry about it, just keep going. But in this late bloomers environment, I was almost running an experiment. I knew that if I limited my medial intake, so that which I was consuming in a media sense, if I limited that, and then it also was very concentrated. Like a Flaubert would say, what a scholar one would be if one knew some half dozen books. So taking that quite literally, I was like, what are the things that I'm really going to study? And so I just literally picked up a list of what you consider to be the great works of fiction or the great works of literature, which were art instruments. They were instruments of art, specifically in literary form. Not nonfiction, not somebody who's trying to recreate history in so many words, but really works of fiction, created structures created out of heads, and said, what's the best one? What's the greatest one? What do I jive with? What am I into? And so I'd wake up in the morning and I'd read from like 7 to make coffee and read from 7 to 11 in the morning, 7 to 12. And then I would just go downstairs and paint for a while. That's after I got rolling in the gallery was in Denver. And
with that exquisite mind that you're now going into, through that morning practice.
Yeah, sure.
On your mind as you're painting anyway, or at least it's part of your energy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And it was at least 8 years of that, 8 years of that.
Yeah.
No television watching.
Right.
No, and I mean, the internet was just sort of burgeoning at that point. It was 2000 to 2008. And I wasn't on the internet a lot, even though it was, available. I was still on a heavy diet because I was looking for I wanted a native understanding of style.
Right.
Something that grew out of the cracks between the cement, and I wanted to see what would grow there if I focused on it long enough. So I spent a lot of time doing that. And then, my paintings, I guess, got more narrationally involved. And then I was like, this is not the place for that shit. I can't stuff all this stuff into a painting like that. Yeah. People need simplicity, and they need elegance, and they need some quiet place to rest in their artwork. Yeah. Like a Matisse where he says that it's like a cozy armchair that I sit in at night.
As opposed to a Mucha where it's like he's cramming a whole revolution into one painting.
And all the nightmares and shit. It's cool.
It's beautiful stuff.
It's good for a museum anyway. Yeah. But so, and then it was just natural for me to go. I was actually stoned in sitting amongst all these relatively tight Germans in Germany, and somebody had passed a joint around, and I got really high, and all of a sudden I remembered this really hilarious stories these guy who was a Kentucky lunatic told me, and I'm like,
Germany.
Yeah, in Germany. Yeah. But no, he was in America. But it was just this, I get stoned with this guy from Kentucky, and he would tell me stories that made me laugh. Right, so as soon as I got stoned again, the stories from Kentucky came back while I was in Germany. So it was kind of an incongruous moment. And of course, the rest of the environment wasn't receptive when I said, what would be cool is if I took this guy's stories and turned them into a movie.
Of course.
So I was like, fuck it. I just wrote my first flick. And
what was it about? What was the first one about?
Was
just out of curiosity.
Here I am, like, we're going to display my wares the first time out, and for all you movie people out there who are listening to this, you're a lucky bastard, all you TV people. But basically like a game show host. So the game show has moved out of a normal set of challenges, and now is into a certain circuit of challenges, which are not only satirically involved, they have heavy commentary in them, but are heavily humanitarian, almost charged in a humanitarian sense, so that there is a lot of criticisms of darker culture that is holding everything down.
What was one of the tasks? Because the Japanese TV comes to mind, and they're crazy game shows where they're licking toilets and
that's pretty far.
Is it along those lines, or on the other side of the spectrum?
It's more like
towards the positive?
curtailed. It isn't necessarily that it's never super denigrative.
Right.
It's much more creative by the nature
Right.
of the game show host, who is the guy from Kentucky, right?
Right.
So I just gave his insane upbringing to this guy from Kentucky who created a juggernaut of a game show that was the most popular in the world, and yet the studio hated it. We're getting sued all the time, but they couldn't take it off because it was the most popular thing in the world.
Right.
So it'll probably run like. I have the pilot, and actually I have a novel. I wrote the novel of it because I wrote the first script, and I'm like, nobody's gonna make this damn thing. So I wrote a novel, and then after I got finished writing the novel, I'm like, nobody's gonna publish this fucking thing. So I rewrote the script, and then so it's just been this whole back and forth affair.
So this particular one's moving forward.
Yeah, I think I've got a couple of really funny folks on it, and then I've just gathered a bunch of people who are potentially involved in it, and it went to this guy named Charles Boyd, who couldn't be convinced that I existed. And he was the guy who was the primary exec on American Idol. And So You Think You Can Dance or whatever the hell it is. But he was an Englishman, and we gave him the decks.
So the Kentuckian, is that you met in Germany, inspired, right? All this world. And now, is this a story about the guy that creates a game show, or is the game show the thing that you're pitching?
Well, it's both. It's a hybrid. Both. So what it is it's the well, I mean, for all you who are form freaks out there, and I'm cluing you into a secret, and this is the secret to almost all live television in a certain way, especially game show stuff or like unscripted stuff is that Simon Cowell on the American Dance or America's Got Talent thing, his value or the value in the show for the viewers is not so much in the performance of the people, but the reactions from the people that we know,
cold, harsh
the
truth.
panel.
Right. Yeah. Something you wouldn't say normally to another person.
But as soon as you do, you have a scripted part that leads into it, so we get to see all these characters in their normal lives or their abnormal lives running into the show. Then you have the show that's live and real, and then you have a scripted part thereafter that deals with kind of the way it's rolling out and personalities thereafter, because we really want to see the people react to what's happening in front of them on the stage. And the more we know about those people, the deeper our sense of commiseration or collusion with them as they're having those reactions.
As opposed to the normally used vignette with the quick family
That's exactly right. You don't do
go
that.
a little bit deeper.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why
so you're more vested as an audience.
You run a scripted before and then an unscripted middle and then it's scripted afterwards. And the reason why the NBC couldn't field it or Universal couldn't field it, talk about form problems, is they couldn't get the scripted and the unscripted departments to talk with one another enough because they never existed together.
Right. So the scripted parts of the show would be obviously a sort of like a caricature
just the story around it, the making of the actual show.
Is it? Let's say there's a contestant, right? And let's say maybe the guy's life. Let's say he's a cowboy on a farm. Maybe it's uninteresting.
Yeah.
Do you pump that up? We don't know.
Absolutely.
And that would be interesting.
Why not?
To steer the audience one way when he's actually not that way. But would you appreciate his performance better?
Yeah.
If that was a little bit on steroids.
That's right. It would and the reason why the game show host himself, such as he is such a problem, is because he keeps making these choices on the fly. And he keeps changing the production value of everything that they put forth because he gets whims based on the new introduction of the information of who's going to be on the show and how he wants the theme to work and what kind of statement he wants to make. And they think he's a fucking lunatic. But he's very smart, and that's the whole point. He's up for a different kind of takeover. Right. But I also knew that here's another problem with things is that, as you know, if you're making art out there and art is a more difficult statement, usually somebody is to blame for that. Usually it's the artist, right? So you make a painting, it creates a succès not a succès d'estime, but a scandalous success in a certain way. If people don't like it, they're going to go after the painter. Right. And this is the perfect aspect to have the production company that would make a show like this get a break, because every week on the show they could sue the hell or try to kill this game show host for saying shit that really everybody wants to hear and needs to be said. The culture needs to be self-critical. Right. And in that format, then what you do is you just burn the damn host every week.
Right, but because Because there's a reality component to those kinds of shows, and if you meddle with who this person is that you start to root for, and then you kind of fictionalize, or you put words into the mouth of the master or whatever.
Yeah.
Then it becomes what are we then now? You know, how do we label the thing?
Right.
And then you're outside of the formula, which I guess they've arisen and they've worked.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, how does how do the two departments agree with one another?
Yeah, well, they need to start doing that, because again, it's like again, the only way that these new forms can come to pass is if people begin to actually consider them as necessary.
Right.
Because the demands are that's another thing about art is it's an extension of the demand to see ourselves differently.
Right.
And so, if you stop that, then you stop the reflective capacity that art is supposed to have. We look at it, we see aspects of ourself out there. We say, these fit my proportions, an extension of myself. This supplies my personality in a way of satisfaction that no other thing can do. Because you can only be so satisfied with your own body and your own quote unquote possessions. That's why aesthetics matters, is because of the externalization of your inner need to be satisfied. And so if that's suppressed, then you get culture not being able to reflect on itself the same way.
Right.
And then it's sort of fucked or hindered, or there's something about it that holds it up when it could just roll naturally forward. And I think that's another reason why artists should really take the helm in terms of how important they are, because they are the ones that issue forth the reflective capacity of humanity.
Yeah.
And
that's something I think about also, or I have thought about over the years, not out of arrogance or this or that, but just in order to produce work, it takes a lot. And people just see the pretty picture at the end of it, or in this age now, the Instagram post,
sure,
and the glossy finished thing, or whatever. But it's a real struggle to create. It's in my world, like when I see a wall, right, and it speaks to me, I go in there. I show stuff. I have a little brochure, which is a good technique. I leave it behind. It's over there. And then, because the owner's not there, property manager, whatever, I leave it behind and I say, I'm here now. This is my work. Take a look. If you like it, I will paint the wall for free.
Wow. Right? Yeah.
And so other times when they ask me, it's a commission. But you wouldn't believe, and I've done this all over the world, people are like, wait, for free?
Yeah, I see.
I don't know. I'm like, no, I'm honestly, I'm just here. I got a car full of paint.
Sure.
I'm driving through France to Spain or some
Incredible.
shit.
What a beautiful thing.
And I'm just, no, it's now though.
Yeah,
because
it is.
We don't have a contact here. We're sleeping in Hamburg or whatever it is.
Sure.
And like 80% of the time, people don't trust the gift, right?
Yeah.
And so
interesting.
What I want to say is it gets strange.
Yeah.
When sometimes you can't give it away.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And in order to make stuff, like it doesn't, like it's there's no backup and you're sort of on your own and you want to make work. It's very difficult to keep doing that.
Yeah. Sure.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of effort. It's like we're like if we were in a physical shape, like artists, we're bodybuilders. We're Mr. Olympia, but you can't see it. We still look the same, and we've done some stuff, and we have a website and whatever.
Yeah, dude, you're Schwarzenegger.
Hello, get to the chopper. But people don't think about that. They think, well, that's that guy's job, and everything is easy. It's not necessarily like that. And go ahead.
Just to interrupt a little bit here, I think a lot of people put value into like cost or something.
Right.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have a cost, then what's the value of it?
Right.
Sure.
And free, just by its name alone, doesn't have value. But free, sometimes it's, they say the best things in life are free.
Right. Yeah, they are.
But
interesting.
We're a society where if we can't put a price tag on it, then it has
That's right.
It doesn't service.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's externalized value.
It's externalized value.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's not known, and that's Well, you have. There's so many things that you're doing in that alone would form literally a semester. I was asked to teach at the University of Colorado at Denver for a little while, and it forced me to really think about what would be those sort of the most important things to talk about, especially as regards this stuff. But in your act of going around that way and being the emissary of a vision that can only happen there, that can only happen through you because it was your idea, you saw the wall, you saw the potential, you saw it spoke to you, you're speaking through it. The gift that you're giving is like a gift of emanation that is way more valuable than anybody could possibly put a name tag on because of the nature of its emergence.
Right.
You know, how it emerged and why it emerged. And it's a different level of taking it to the streets because it's sort of curtailed to that moment. And you become like an honorable emissary of what is now emerging in the world. Right. And I think that if you think that you are really the source to bring forth this moment into an aesthetic fruition, then it's one of the most important tasks that you can have.
That's
and in
to
fact,
your point
necessary.
earlier. Yeah.
And also gives you that Schwarzenegger-like strength to be able to handle times in which externalized value systems don't match up with the beauty of your own exchanges.
Right.
They will eventually catch up. They just
No
don't match
shit,
up.
dude.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But sometimes it doesn't. And then what? Then what do you do? You know? And,
Well, then you just
and then you got to keep going.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And
It goes dormant
And
for a while.
and this is the point, because I had a deeper point to mentioning that, is that we spoke earlier about, you know, like who decides. You know, most of the time it's, well, there's a space available in my home.
Yeah.
We've happened
Yeah.
upon you. We love your stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Right. It can just make it a little bit more rectangular, and you know, we're using a lot of mustard in the interior. Yeah. Can you sort of put a little mustard? You know, and it becomes like art as an object, right? Yeah. Which then also signals to guests of the house or whatever that you're right in there where you need to be.
Yeah. Preface it though, like if I do this, it's without your influence. If I'm going to do this, or I'm not going to do it.
I take them as challenges. You know,
That's
it depends
exactly right.
with
That's the healthiest way to
because
do
I've
it.
done a lot of stuff where, like on paper, you know, or just like in Sean, you want to close the door for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't sure if there was a door.
Yeah, there is a door. It's just I thought it was going to be really hot anyway.
About to get rude.
Oh,
Thanks.
no, it's perfect. I'm about to get rude. That's fine. Yeah.
And so the challenge is obviously to get to keep making work.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Sure.
very important.
Sure.
And
Sure.
like as we all know, every artist knows this. Sometimes you take a gig, or quite often in period you take a lot of gigs, especially starting out. That okay, I can make some money here. I'll kind of bend to one way.
Sure.
I'll be pleasing. I won't be this difficult artist. I'm not going to be emotional about anything.
Yeah.
And there's teachings in those moments.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of times those requirements or those limitations to the vision of, let's say, the client, there's something in that too. You'll discover stuff if you're awake while you're making stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to the point of acting more as an artist, because, I mean, let's face it, when you really are an artist, you're not just one person.
Right.
You're a channel of energy which has vibrational memory from every artist that ever lived.
Right.
I mean, Picasso, when he said that a little man a long time ago on a Greek island tried to make a woman, but what he ended up making was a sculpture. And that sculpture became like the iconic figure from the Cyclades. So he used to say that every time somebody tried to make a sculpture, they were just the little man from the Cyclades, making a woman that meant something to him, a small icon of a woman.
Right.
That to which he probably was a wish or a dream, is that please allow me to have all my dreams fulfilled in this sweet permanence, this object of permanence. So that's what you're conjuring when you're doing this thing. It's some really, really deep, super sub themes that are going. So to your point of, Sean, of yours saying, sometimes it can bring you to another level, when you are interfaced with the demands of a client who says, we want it to match the couch, which is mustard, is that it actually, you become more aware of the multiplicity of your voices within you. So what you do is you're adding their voice to your river. You're adding the color.
The co-editor
to the man from the Cyclades is listening, and all of a sudden paints the little sculpture yellow.
Or with a
because of
C
that.
cup instead of a B cup.
And that is the most generous fucking thing you can do as an artist to anybody else, is include them in your vision.
Right.
And include them.
Collaborate.
That's right. But it's a welcoming. You jump in my river, and that which comes out will be components of both of us.
Right.
And we will join together in this thing.
Right.
And if you think about that, it energizes you when you get conflict that says this isn't what we wanted or anything like that.
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of people don't know how sort of silly and disrespectful some requests are.
Yeah, right.
And by disrespect, I mean like it's like an ignorance, but an
Yeah.
ignorance. They're ignoring what it is that we're actually doing. And of course, if the missus really insists on that powder blue or whatever it is, it's just out of this habit of, I think there's a commodification of art, right? It's art as an object rather than
it's brokerage.
Exactly, yeah,
brokerage.
And so I'm not hating on capitalism at all, but it's just I want it this way, and I should be able to get it this way.
Yeah, right.
I want my burger without any pickles on it.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Comes back to our selfishness, our possible selfishness. Like if you go to let's say a club, and the DJ is spinning like rock and roll. And
Exactly.
Like, hey, I want to hear a little hip hop.
Right.
Like, that's a personal moment ask.
Song requests for
But
DJs, same shit.
The DJ actually he was trying to create this energy and
Yeah,
this like
right.
silo for everyone.
And it may take him 10 songs,
like,
but now you're interrupting that stream if he's a good DJ.
But we sometimes feel a little like deserving of our asks, and especially if it's in our home.
Yeah,
Right.
This
right.
is my
Sure.
party.
Right.
And it's all fair.
Absolutely.
You should
That
play
is.
a little bit of. I know you're a rock and roll DJ, but I asked for a little hip hop.
It doesn't hurt to
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah. Sure, man.
And it doesn't hurt to ask.
No,
and sometimes
no.
it's completely fine.
Yeah.
But it also depends on your relationship with the client.
That's
it,
right.
It depends, with what of an air, through which channel you meet them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not saying
The energy
we should be
around it.
so worshipped. Not that at all.
Well, and or their apprehension of you and your role in the whole artistic universe.
Right.
Because if they really are like, dude, we worship you. You do anything you want.
Yeah.
Then you get another kind of freedom that enters
Right,
into it.
exactly.
And, but either way, I think it's all freedom in a way.
Yeah. Have
you
you
get
ever
that chance.
sold a painting that because it was like, let's say at the studio or something, and you kind of knew like, no, I'm not too fond of this one.
Yeah.
But someone, I've done that. And someone like shows up and they're so in love with that painting. But for you, it's not necessarily like even finished it, but it could be, but I'm done with it. I've been struggling with it and I kind of don't like where it's going.
Yeah.
I should burn it or throw it away.
Yeah.
And then someone said, how about that one?
Yeah.
And then you said, well, that's one of my favorite ones.
That's so funny. Well, yeah, you can't account for taste for sure in that.
You know what I
case,
mean?
For absolutely
That's
certain. And I think,
You think that's false?
So,
Or
no. But for me, it's like
I've seen a little bit of guilt when
when
I've
they
done it.
suck, they're super suck. There's
Yeah.
no, I mean, like when I
but
know they're bad.
I'm
they're
talking
really
that
bad.
one that you feel it sucks. This one,
Well.
but it happened to be there, and all of a sudden, it's the one that was behind another painting.
See,
and then they discovered it, and they said, "No, that's the one."
Yeah, I've been in sort of circumstances. I've actually never sold one like that. But I actually see to make a distinction is that when I deal with stuff, and I don't know what the hell gets in my way, but when I blow it super hard. But see, like when I'm looking around, I mean, we're sitting here in Chase's studio here, and as I look around, I come to satisfaction. Over and over and over again. And a certain way that he works, and I wanted to mention this is that there's a narrative, but the narrative is about the way things are stacked. So with a simple stack, when I say stack, I mentioned geology and all that other stuff before, but there is a stratigraphy, which comes first, which layer comes first.
Right.
That is kind of a trusting thing, where I found it really hard as a painter to cover a whole surface in one color, and then to cover it again in slightly different color, and then cover it again in a slightly different color, growing that out.
Right.
I always wanted to go straight to what I consider to be the end image.
Right.
And that isn't a very trusting way to go about an image.
That's a very interesting thing you bring up.
Yeah, so you are the most trusting painter when it comes to 3 or to 4 layers, 5 layers of stratigraphy. What goes first? What goes on top of that? What goes on top of that? And then the key plate, in printmaking is a key plate. which you pop over the top, which
Right.
secures all the rest of it
Yeah,
in
yeah.
its presumptions.
Yeah, I call that plate insurance.
Yeah, that is
You know?
exactly right.
Because I love. No one's ever said that, but that's what you just said. What you just noticed is
Yeah.
exactly how I work.
Yeah.
I start with somewhere,
Yeah.
right, and then I trust that somewhere will take me to the next
Builds
place.
to the forward. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I know I have the, like you call it the key plate.
Yeah.
I know I have that insurance.
Yeah.
And I paid premium
That's
for
the
that
BAM.
insurance.
That's
right?
the BAM.
And any
Yeah.
mistakes, any problems with depth, or
Yeah.
even though I'm super 2D,
Yeah.
I know if there's a mistake or if there's a color problem or
Yeah.
something's off
You can
balance or
wrench
something's falling off, that key layer can refocus the whole thing.
That's it.
Interesting.
And wrench it back into place.
Right, exactly. Wrench it. Beautiful
That's
word.
you literally like, and sometimes the dance between not knowing what the hell it's going to be, and then the ability to call up those last key elements that form the visual concert.
That's
It's
the
a visual
magic.
concert.
That's the story of your life. Almost.
Is beautiful though.
Which is insane.
But Chase is the absolute master of that. For those of you who are listening, is an absolute master of fresh and rich.
You
Because
flatter
the
me,
richness,
darling.
no, the rich is in the because the richness is in the vision, and in the coordination, which is literally ancient color coordinations. I'm looking at Chase is being framed by one of his paintings. It's about 7x7. And I've been looking at it the entire time, which is the reason why I mentioned things like I mentioned purple, because I've been overwhelmed by these 3 different versions of purple. But he is literally the master of fresh and rich at the same time, whereas a very few layers, maybe 4 to 5 different layers of stacking, which results in a really complete sensation. And that's really difficult because, I go back and forth. And since the layers of mine are since it's more representational in a classical sense, the layers are much more indistinct, you know what I mean, and kind of roll into the one another in kind of a mushier way.
I don't.
But there's a cleanness that requires such efficiency and such knowledge of where this thing is going that's where the completeness comes. It's like a slam dunk in a different kind of way. All I see in your work is just nothing but slam dunk after slam dunk after slam dunk. I don't see,
thanks, man.
Yeah, I don't see I don't see failures.
Yeah.
I don't see visual failures.
Yeah, I learned early on because my challenge was, because I'm painting all this stuff with spray paint and I'm used to like
It's amazing.
big walls, and there it's a totally different situation.
Yeah, sure.
So I wanted to find a way to take some of that energy inside the studio, but still use the same medium, which I love so much.
Right.
But it's not supposed to go like this. Is larger, I guess, but it's not supposed to be condensed small.
Yeah, I know what you
So
mean.
how can I get that flavor in there and still get that aesthetic, the same energy from the street in? And I don't know. I think the first 50 to 100 paintings, it was like one disaster after the next. Like absolutely, like I got to paint over this. Over this.
Seems impossible, but because of the success of these.
Yeah,
But
what I learned is, and I'm not the first one to learn this, and of course you know it as well, is that when there's an obvious mistake, right?
Yeah.
It's not, and you give up like, fuck, this was crucial now that this was the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you make that mistake because your hand's shaky or the cap, is overspraying too much or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
And now you got to go back 2 hours to fix that mistake.
Yeah, right.
Rather than doing that and having regret, talking about mirror to life. No, it's like, no. This is an opportunity.
Yeah, it is.
This is now a new puzzle to solve. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's interesting in painting, which maybe a lot of people don't really think about it. People probably think, well, they're artists,
Interesting.
They sketch it, then they paint it, and it'll be what it'll be.
Yeah,
they know in advance, and it's just like ingredients in a cake.
That's right.
But it's not.
It's
the
not.
cake is going to explode 15 times
absolutely.
before it's finished, man.
Yeah, exactly right.
And it's that.
I love that.
It's almost like that chance you take, that little rascal inside of you that feels like, you know what? I can pull this off still.
Yeah, right.
I don't feel like that now.
Sure.
But if I try, maybe. And then the first time, okay, that kind of worked out.
Yeah.
And I think that's important as also like a metaphor for life.
Yeah. Well, you're working in that case. You're working. There was a line that Picasso said that I loved. I keep mentioning that dude, but he was a freak of like
I love that
of just, I mean, he thought he was a creator of many different forms, which he might well have done apart from all the theft and everything. But he did say that I don't paint nature, I paint like nature. Which means that the growth from form to form is like a teleological or mappable growth of something. And as you discuss how you're growing, those mistakes that you're making are actually part of the mutation phase of any evolution. So, and I do this, I have a really hard time doing it. And that's another cultivated aspect, is that a lot of people can't live with their mistakes for very long. Long enough anyway, for them to see the vision that was behind the mistake, that was further than the mistake. They really are not willing to see that. So I'm always like, as soon as I know that I've made some kind of cardinal error, I'm always like, before I jump on that thing to erase it, I force myself, and I'm literally learning to force myself to get back and go, just let that thing sit for a second, dude. Don't get in there and wreck that thing just yet.
Don't be so quick to apologize for it or to this.
That's
or that.
exactly
Let's look
right.
at it.
Apologize is the right word.
It could be a beautiful mistake.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But you have to be able to not only make the distinction, but then also you get to the point where you're like fucking Patton, who's like, you don't make mistakes, you don't dig in, you don't apologize, you don't hold ground.
Yeah, that's back to
you just
ignoring.
fucking move. You just move.
Because then you're too mechanical about it. Then the energy's out of it.
Then it's functionally dead, especially as an evolutionary thing.
Right.
So artwork, as it refers to the next evolutionary phase, I think those evolutionary phases are demonstrated within any making of art, and that's what I call getting into a painting. Because sometimes you can just know where it's going and you just do it. Then there's other times when you don't know where the sumbitch is going. And you get into
and
it.
you're solving those puzzles.
And then you start. That's exactly right. But the puzzles are so much like a symphony, where you're working out in your head what will work, and so you're comparing it between the image that you see at the end and the image that you see in front of you, and you're fighting those things out from one another.
And that's and I've thought a lot about that. Wow, I love that we can talk like this.
And I'm glad we're getting it too.
For everyone that's listening now, we're getting into some stuff that's beyond like, hey, pretty pictures. No. This is like the working environment of
the guts.
Exactly.
And also the true agentry, of what we're doing. And it's not just. It can be anybody. It can be fashion designer. It can be interior designer. Anything. Anytime you're composing something that requires an orchestration. It just so happens that within the walls of a painting, you're orchestrating within this limited form. Those elements that you consider elements. The inheritance of modernism is saying we are really focusing on the shape life within it as elements that we are coordinating. And I think they were necessarily simple because they couldn't literally coordinate all the complexities anymore. Maybe they fell out of being able to. If you look through an art history book, there were some very complex paintings in the Baroque period and Renaissance, very complicated images. Oh shit, dude! God, what a decentralized universe that was.
Unbelievable.
No center really, right? That's the hell.
It's like David Lynch. This is happening. Hey, but what is happening? And fire over there, rape there.
Seriously, the total. And to describe the chaos of it. But that's why I say that painting will always reflect the era that it's coming out of. Which is the reason why the suppression of it or the not understanding of it becomes a little bit of a problem. Just a little bit of a problem.
Because then. I don't know anything. Music is a big thing in my life. But I do not know how to play the piano or an instrument or anything.
For sure.
I tried making some beats for a couple of years.
I'm with you too.
I got in there and I made some stuff that satisfied me at the time. But I often wonder, like, how much can I really appreciate, let's say, Radiohead or someone, without. I mean, I appreciate them, like I cry or like I feel goosebumps or they transform me. But how much can I really appreciate without actually knowing how to play an instrument?
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so with painting, I'm sure it's, I think who said it? I forget who it was. No one ever went to an art opening and stood in front of a painting and cried. I mean, probably people did. But
it's very rare.
But listen to a song. Certain songs, just a song, 3 minutes, you're in tears, you're transported, you're there. And so, obviously, the challenge is different. But would it be helped by anything? I don't know.
It's a different stimuli too. Like music is more auditorial,
right?
And you compare it to your memories. Where like I look at paintings and
Interesting.
it stimulates me in a
I
different
see.
way.
Interesting.
But it's still art. You know, it's still like I look at this, and because I know you, when you talk about layers and depths, I'm like, oh, this is Chase's life. Like he came here, he trusted himself, and he moved in layers, and he had to like go to here. Maybe that didn't work out. Went to the right, that worked out, and he started building this trust about himself.
That's right.
Where like music is, you know, it's a reflection of the artist, and not necessarily always in like a good way or like what they're going through, but it stimulates you. In a different
that's right.
way.
That's right.
You hear a certain tone and
Yeah.
kind of makes you feel sad.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the visual is one removed. The visual is more of an artifact. Like for instance, when I say the visual, I mean like a painting is more of an artifact, whereas sound is a little closer to the causational body. It's like a causal body.
Yeah.
So I think the spontaneous response to music is that you say it's potentially more emotional, but both of those systems require a private experience.
Absolutely.
Because it's really hard to ball in public.
Yeah,
when you're looking at, unless you're like,
and also in the nature of, let's say, a painting. Like I had a friend, and he since is no longer with us, but like he painted from his pain, and the way he grew up was no joke. But it was in every painting. And spectacular work, but he had a real difficulty in selling his work because it's kind of a horror show over here. A song you can listen with, but if that's playing all the time, you're dealing with that song, you can't do it. You know,
painting is a permanent
like
song.
if you're a little depressed, don't listen to Mezzanine, Massive Attack. People commit suicide over that shit. You know what I mean? So you know, like but I think there's some, there should be something enlivening, something aggrandizing, something happy, energetic. Like I love to look at that, like a beautiful thing out of nature.
That's right.
And so maybe music serves other purposes.
Yeah. Well, and film, like you said, it freaking goes away.
Right.
You know, I mean, you can watch a horror story of a movie and be done with it at the end of it. Even though, that's the problem with all of it.
Yeah.
Is that what I don't think people understand about aesthetics is you're not just feeding those images back into your own specific experience. You may be feeding them into the frequency of consciousness itself.
Yeah. And that's an interesting
that's
one.
dangerous.
Because now certain things like the beheadings and stuff on YouTube a couple years back, I didn't watch them.
Yeah, you're not supposed to.
I don't want to watch them.
Yeah,
because
exactly
I guess now in scientific study, certain films even and certain like some of these horrific acts that we have in video form, like they can cause PTSD depending on how sensitive the being is. 100%. Right, so I don't necessarily. I can imagine enough. I don't want to see it.
Shit.
Right, and like you said, if you're feeding that back, if you're looping that back in, there's something to be said for that. Especially when something's not resolved. There's no new proposition at the end of it.
Yeah.
If it's just for the gore of it,
that's right.
I don't really want to create it.
But there's also a responsibility to reality. To like, I'm not saying just show fucking monsters ripping off heads, but if it's all candy and dandelions, there's not a truth to that.
I don't mean that, but I think place it, in a setting where it's not just the horrific, unimaginable horror without some solution, some narrative, some let's say American History X, right? We go into that film, hating this motherfucker. Towards the end, through his growth, right? We're like, man, that's.
I see.
This can happen. Yeah. But the horrific parts happen also. But here's now a way out, rather than just, let's say you see a video of 20 dudes whose mouth is wide open on a curb and some other dude stomping on the back of his head, breaking the guy's whose teeth is on the curb out of his mouth. I don't necessarily need to see that.
Yeah, even though that's happening.
And that was a scene in American History X.
It was a major scene,
right?
One of the most memorable.
So, but in the framework, of that story, right now it's digestible, and now the horror is not the only thing that was shared. I think that's very important.
Yeah. Well, there's that dude. Richard DeVore, again, he spoke about gestural, right? Gestural psychology and those kinds of things. The ceramic dude, and you guys can look him up. Richard DeVore, really elegant work, but he put it in a succinct way that all artwork, if it is to be supported by anybody that's alive, it has to be life affirming.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what it goes through.
Right.
You know, because those are the specific experiences that we consider just, those things which we should conquer.
Right.
You know, and once we know that we should conquer an experience, then it doesn't get so bad when you know that it's conquerable.
Right.
But it's those super denigrative, super nasty things that actually I think, because everybody's talking about human nature. This is human nature, that we're violent. That's total bullshit. For all you guys who are listening out there is no human nature. Look at Rupert Sheldrake as one of the greatest biologists in the world who knows that it's literally just habit fields.
Habit fields.
You just weave a habit pattern into an organism
Learn behavior.
that is part of a deeper frequency, though, like a radio station that everybody's on. And you feed those miseries back into it over and over again, and those miseries get propagated just it gets generated within people. So
Right, so that's self-fulfilling
That's exactly right.
Was it what's it called? There's a clinical term for it.
It's like propaganda.
Is it the inner dialogue?
Associative conditioning? No.
It's your self-speak. It's your inner dialogue. Like
right.
if you're constantly saying you ain't shit, you suck,
Yeah.
and deeper down behind the thought,
Your
I
cells
cannot be
are listening.
loved. Your parents didn't love you. This and that. If that's the constant,
the dialogue.
feedback loop to your own life,
Sure.
then probably you're gonna get very upset.
Oh,
very fucking
absolutely.
quickly.
Your world's
and
gonna
we all
get
have
ruined.
degrees of that.
Yeah,
So I see what you're
absolutely.
saying.
Yeah. So
Right.
so that which you feed back into it becomes very important, which is another reason why the responsibility is that no matter what is shown artistically, that the artists learn to be the stewards through the dark phase, which is actually the true definition of a revolutionary.
Right.
Is somebody who stewards through the chaos phase
Right.
so that it comes together in another way.
Right.
Because everything's got to fall apart.
Right.
And everything then has to thus comes together. But most people are scared to shit for the dark phase.
Yeah. And that's what I love about when I romanticize the role of the artist. Right?
Yeah.
And also myself.
Yeah.
It's that I've never had a job.
Yeah.
I worked maybe one day at a skate shop. Then for years I wasn't allowed to work in this country. And I had to hustle, no support, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so then I
That's
thought,
badass.
don't look at it like that. Don't look at material things. Don't look at what they have. Just look at, you're absorbing.
That's right.
On behalf, you're experiencing
right.
on behalf.
Yeah.
And then if you choose to make work, which is what I've been choosing.
Yeah.
Like, what do you give back?
That's right. That's it.
How do you come back from those? It's
That's
like the
it.
Fraggle Rock, the little guy, the uncle
Uh-huh.
with the postcards. I feel like I'm that little uncle with the postcard. And I'm reporting back
back.
to those that are locked into jobs.
It's beautiful.
Never
dude.
took a chance.
Yeah.
Risk is a big,
that's right.
scary thing for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And so the artist goes on these excursions. You know,
bet.
I mean, in the realm of
they're
acting,
fucking pirates,
it's
man.
bananas where some people go
They're
on the
pirates.
spectrum,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, and we all have degrees of, to what lands we want to travel,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
but we're the ones, we're the
Yeah.
ones, come down from the mountains every once in a while,
Yeah,
and say,
yeah.
it's gonna be okay, but beware of this or beware of that, and here's some work to
That's
this
exactly
is my
right.
supporting evidence.
That's
right.
right.
Yeah.
Supporting evidence is really, really important. Couldn't be more important, in
Yeah.
fact. And that's what I always looked for because
Right.
it signified, they would become the artifacts of another kind of adventure that went on, and the adventure was in reflective form, because form as a communicant will tell you a lot more about it than just the subject matter.
Right.
And when I say form, I mean in the traditional sense, I'm going to separate form from content because the content may be the ideas around it, but the form itself is just within the four walls of its own thing,
Right.
within the parameters of the sculpture, within the parameters of the painting. The form is, and that's distinct from shape. Which is something that lives within the form.
Right.
So people in art school often make they speak of form when they mean shape.
Right.
But within the whole, there's a form of an artwork, and then there are shapes within. But if you play in forms, then you have to go on an adventure.
Right.
And that adventure is sometimes you can't call support to do that.
Right.
Because, as Queen Isabella told Christopher Columbus that you can go out and do this, as long as you find the damn place. You can go off and find, other lands.
Oh, yeah.
Similarly, sometimes you got to go out on a boat without the support. But there's a different kind of support, right? A different kind of responsibility.
You're supported by, it's
by
again,
the God, by the thousands and millions of gods within you.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Call
There's
to
something
this.
there that there's that drive.
Yeah.
That, and there's incrementally, you're sort of like, supported by little moments of magic or like
Yeah, that's
affirmation,
it.
and maybe
Yeah.
it's self-delusion. Could be,
Fuck,
but
who
whatever it is,
cares?
it's working, and
Who
you go a
cares?
little bit further.
That's exactly
a little
right.
bit further, and the
Yeah.
more you go, right, the hardest thing to do is to take that first step into risk.
Yeah.
Right? Because
It is.
no, it's so comfortable here.
It is.
You got running water.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go in those oceans.
I got
What's this?
running water.
This is crazy. You know, you got a couple of hooas on the
That's
side.
very
What's
funny.
that?
That's so funny.
No, but that I think is interesting because a lot of people won't take that chance. They
Yeah,
won't take that
I know,
risk
I
because
know.
it's too safe where they are. And the older you get, that safety
I
becomes a
know.
prison.
I know it
Right?
does. It does. What was Ben Franklin's thing where he says, "No, was it Ben Franklin who is if you sacrifice freedom for security, soon you'll have neither."
Wow.
Or something like that. Which is
Deep
like,
shit.
yeah, I know he nailed it on that one because he realized, or it was either Jefferson or Franklin that said that. But you know, to those points of guys who actually said something that was sort of worth something, which is that. But to how it refers to us is that if you don't, you know, to fear the known is to really to understand the whole system. You know, to fear the unknown is foolish because the unknown is actually more at your beck and call than the known. The known is already been stated, so to
Right.
speak, and as such isn't almost worth restating. You know, so the unknown is the only thing that's actually has value in this case because it represents those places that we're not yet. You know, we haven't arrived at, so to speak. So the adventure of making art, the adventure of getting involved in the whole thing has to do with embracing aspects of the unknown and learning how to be comfortable where there is no comfort in sight.
Yeah.
And you're a fucking master of that. This guy, I'm telling you, when the book is written about him, it will tell you that the story of walking into the unknown with the confidence of being able to handle it is demonstrated by Chase here. And I mean, he's been
Wow,
doing
that
it for a
is-
long time. But dude,
This is
you're
bananas.
like a
Well,
you know.
that's thank you for that.
Yeah, you're
but
more than welcome.
Parts of that are true, but you know, I mean, I don't know. You know, I always
you can play it as humble as you want, but
no, it's not.
you're still doing it, dude.
It's just I knew that. You know, I just believed in the beauty of this art,
Yeah,
right? Which
right.
wasn't art at the time. In 1995, when I got here, you know, it's like this is not art.
Jeez,
You
dude,
know? And then a few
1995.
characters and like a cool teacher back home or something would say, no, it is, but it isn't.
Yeah.
You know, wink, wink. It's creative, but it's not art,
Yeah.
and it will never be. And then I disagreed,
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
I just got into painting walls, and you know, $200 here, $50 there.
amazing.
You know,
It's an incredible
and
story.
it's unbelievable to me to see how, you know, how it's become true.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it was all along.
Yeah.
Because in Belgium we have an saying, for the same amount of money, right? So for the same amount of,
Oh, I see.
you know, for the same amount
I
of
see.
money,
Yeah.
you know,
I
there would be
understand.
no wave of Banksy
That's
and
right.
the documentaries
Yeah,
and the
absolutely.
coolness and the
I'm with you.
marketing
I'm
and the
with
this
you,
and
yeah.
that and
Yeah.
youth culture
For
and like
sure.
the perceived danger that's attached to like working with spray paint on the walls. You
Yeah,
know, there's not a lot of
absolutely.
danger there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're doing illegal shit like back in the day and tagging and stuff, yeah, that's a different situation.
Yeah.
But now this street art component, no, you meet the guy. Hey, where's the wall? Where's the ladder? You paint. There's no danger.
Right,
Of course, there's
for sure.
shady characters.
Yeah.
But it's so perceived because people haven't really looked at it.
Sure.
And in the end, it's just nice to have connected with something.
Yeah.
You know, and with hip hop, it's the same. That was no one believed in that. You know, graffiti is the same thing. Skateboarding was the same.
Sure,
thing.
absolutely.
You know, it was like, what is this? Useless
Yeah.
wooden toys.
Absolutely.
You're fucking punks on the street, fucking rats. Go home,
Yeah.
go home to your mother.
Yeah,
You know, like
really.
all this.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing? And
Yeah.
it's one of the most amazing art forms
It
that
is.
have ever existed.
Oh,
the magic
absolutely.
of manipulating
Oh shit.
some maple
Yeah.
board with four
It's
wheels,
incredible.
and they're doing this on command, life
I
or
know.
death. This
It's
is
not,
bananas.
I know. It is
You know?
amazing.
Everything
Yeah.
good always comes to fruition like that. It just takes time. Either the world catches up or they call
Yeah,
on
that's
right,
right. That's
right in the
right.
beginning.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
And it's
Well-
nice, and it's nice to see, and that took just it was just connecting to something.
Yeah.
You know? And when
Well-
you know for you, and then it kind of doesn't matter. You know.
Yeah,
What everyone
your
else thinks.
specific
Yeah.
experience. And another thing I'll mention, you know, I'd like to commit this one for good and for posterity, but just in this artist's opinion or in, you know, the multitude of voices within me, I've enjoyed not only your story coming from Belgium and coming here, but also the particular brand of acceptance that you have given to Los Angeles and Los Angeles is committed to you. So that Chase has become like an icon of Los Angeles to where you can't, you can't really go through and around Los Angeles without knowing his iconography and or his style. You can't do it. But that's the beautiful part is that it's not just something that where you have issued forth these things under the presumption that you should be there because you just should be there.
Right.
You should be there because of the statements that are being made therein, the visual ones, the content ones, the shape quality ones, the way that you conduct space, the stacking, the playfulness. All those things are so wonderful to be giving to this town.
Yeah.
And it's this
Thanks,
town
man.
breathes
That
and
means a lot.
lives.
Wow.
And you should be all the fuck over this town. This town would play differently if they were interfaced with your work all the time. So I know there's beautiful stuff in town, but man, you got stuff that is the most iconically readable and potent, immediately recognizable stuff. So anybody who's out there listening comes to Los Angeles, look at Chase's, look at his website and figure out what the common theme of shape and the color and the texture and the way things have been brought together, and then go on a tour around Los Angeles and find them. It'd be really cool to do that, I think, and I think it would be important to do. Yeah. I know I myself traveled around Berlin doing the same thing,
right?
Because it's not just looking for one particular painter, but if you guys ever been to Berlin, like
it's the
street
best.
art is fucking
unbelievable. They don't buff it. There's no cleaning up. They just leave it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I think it's a beautiful solution.
Yeah, it is. But you're beautifing the hell out of LA.
Yeah. Thanks,
and
man.
LA, I know there was
I'm blushing over here.
Dude, you should blush all the way, man. You deserve it. But like LA will probably, there's an old line that this author that I love said that he was writing in English about Russia and said that Russia will never be able to repay her debts to me. And similarly, I don't think LA will be able to repay her debts to you.
Wow, but I feel that way about LA because
that's right,
it's
dude.
Been such an inspiration.
Me too, dude. Yeah. Me too. LA is definitely
fair exchangement is in robbery.
Yeah, baby, it's a wonderful thing.
I like that.
Yeah,
mutual fructification.
Absolutely,
beautiful.
Fruck away.
Yeah, nice one. Good, man.
That's great.
Well, that seems like a nice note.
Yeah.
Unless if you want to add anything else. I think this is a good position.
Yeah,
we went over everything. I always like keeping audiences leaving wanting more.
Yes,
and you're always welcome back whenever you want.
Oh, I would love to. It's been an honor.
Let's stay friends of the podcast.
Yeah,
and where can people take a look at your work?
Well, it would probably be just like if you look me up. There's one blog that I was on which comes up in the series of headings, but. Just Stefan Kleinschuster is you'll see a bunch of stuff from
and we'll spell it out, but we'll put it in the footnotes of the podcast.
It's Stefan is but then the last name is Kleinschuster, and it's an Austrian thing, so Austro-Hungarian, but Kleinschuster is Kleinschuster. But anyway, you can. I mean, there's only a couple of us in the whole country, so
we'll put
the links everywhere.
No shit.
Stefan, man, huge fan of your work.
Thanks,
huge fan of you. Thank you so much for coming in.
You're so welcome, Chase. It's been wonderful.
Fantastic.
I had never had so much fun on a podcast, man.
Fantastic.
I appreciate
Listening
it.
to you talk.
Thank you, my man.
Oh, dude, thank you so much. Ditto to you.
I really insight, man.
Thank you. Damn,
Absolutely,
I really appreciate it.
All right, peeps, that's it. And boom.
Yeah.
Shaka.
Boom.
On to the next one.
See you guys.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Hey.
That was Mr. Stefan Kleinschuster, everyone. Man, was that a beautiful conversation or what? We went into it, went down to the depths, but like I like to call it, the layers of the lasagna. We were right in the bechamel, and how beautiful was it? What a great mind, what a great artist, what a great person. On to the next one. And as always, you can find us on Instagram at Happy No Fear. And I'm Chase, of course. You can find me at The Art of Chase on Instagram. See you next week. Later.